Hi, everybody. It's great to be back with you for our daily office Bible studies. It's been a while. We took a little hiatus here in August and September and part of October to make some space in the schedule and the budget for recording these history videos, which have been coming out on a semi-regular basis, little by little, through the months of September and October. And there's a lot more to come, so stay tuned to that. But one thing I do want to do is resume with these daily office study videos. I don't know if you have kept up with the pace of the daily office readings, but we are in the prayer book, page 988. We're in the week closest to October 26th, this being the 24th, and this is the track that we're on for our Bible readings. And I hope, actually this is page 990, and I hope that you will join us or rejoin us, or glad to rejoin you and keep pace. Now, for the last week we began with the book of Ezra. And this is really a new chapter in the Bible story. We're very familiar with Abraham and the captivity in Egypt, with the Exodus, with the conquest of the land, with the settlement of the land, with David and Solomon. And that's basically where we've come up to in our Sunday preaching series over the last couple years in the summers. And where we pick up now with the daily office is the return. This is the return from exile. It's a story that is not as well familiar to us. You remember how the Babylonians came and they destroyed Jerusalem and the temple. They took the people captive in the year 586. Well, in Ezra and Nehemiah and those later prophets, we catch up with the story of the return. That happened in the years that followed and culminated with the building of the temple, the second temple, in the year, I guess it's 516. So 70 years of captivity, 70 years in which the temple was destroyed, 70 years in which Jerusalem was largely a heap of rubble. And now the people are returning and they are building an altar there for the sacrifices and the worship of Yahweh. They lay a foundation stone for the temple. We saw all that last week in opening chapters of Ezra. And now this week, they are rebuilding the temple. And of course, there was a lot of opposition. And so in chapters Ezra 1 through 4, you see this happening. And then chapter 4 sets up this plot tension. It's the opposition to the building. And I'm curious, and I want you to study it out. Who were those people in verses 1 and 2 and verse 9 in chapter 4 of the book of Ezra? And I'll cut to the chase. I'll give you a little hint. These are the people that would become identified as the Samaritans in the Gospels. So that explains the background in Jesus's day of the historic hostility that existed between Jews in Judea and the Samaritans. Kind of like Jesus talking with the woman at the well. She was a Samaritan woman. It's very interesting to read the conversation between Jesus and the Samaritan woman with Ezra in the background. Now, I want you to notice as this hostility mounts, the tactics that the Samaritans used to oppose the rebuilding of the temple. First, they want to help, then they discourage them and make them afraid. Then they're corrupting the officials to impede their progress, and then they're lodging false accusations against the people to slow down the building of this temple. Now, here's a good question to ask as you read the Bible. First, how does their experience, God's people in the Bible, in their time help shed light on our experience in our time? Are there parallels here that we can observe? And what can we learn from them for our day? So here's a good example. How do we see those same tactics being used against the church, the churches today in modern secular society? Are there things that we can learn from how they dealt with this opposition as we face opposition to the growth of the gospel in today's world? All right, so now we come into this week and we have a passage from Haggai and a passage from Zechariah. This is the prophetic input. This is the background to the building of the temple. And it's interesting how the temple now has gone from being something that God was ambivalent about. We saw that back in David's day, right? And then it became a major symbol of the kingdom of Israel in Solomon's day. And now, in the return from exile, the temple has become a core part of Judah's identity and Judah's obedience. And these prophets go so far as to tie God's people's enjoyment of God's blessing in the land to rebuilding the temple. It's gone from something that God was kind of ambivalent about back with David to something now that is at the very core of God's covenantal blessings, all the way back to the book of Deuteronomy. And you might remember how God promised, when you come into this land, if you obey me, I'm going to pour out blessings on you that overflow. And now, as they return to the land centuries later, those blessings are now tied to rebuilding the temple. So they're in the land, but they're only experiencing half of the blessings, let's say. God says, build the temple and good things are to come. I want you also to observe how the opposition to building this temple is becoming an imperial matter. These local officials, these Samaritans, are now appealing to the emperor, all the way in Persia. This is the Persian Empire, and there's a flurry of letter writing, trying to get an edict from the emperor to halt the building of the temple. And I want you to observe in verses 11 through 13 here in chapter 5, how the Jews rebuilding the temple, what authorities they claim to do so, okay? And again, the question is, what parallels are there between their time and ours? What can we learn from what they did as we seek to be obedient, faithful, effective in our service to God and our witness to the world? Well, folks, that's what I've got for today, this week, and it's good to be back at it. And I hope you will stay with us as we study Ezra, the return from exile. Also, we're beginning the book of Revelation this week, and I want you to read the Revelation maybe through a different set of lenses than you're used to. It's very common in today's world among evangelicals, Christians, to read the book of Revelation as though everything that it's saying is speaking of our day. It's written as though it was written to an audience in the 21st century rather than to an audience in the first century. And as you read those passages from the book of Revelation, I want you to put yourself in the shoes, not of somebody reading the newspaper today, but of somebody, a Christian, trying to be faithful in the first century. What is the Revelation saying to me in the first century as a Christian trying to obey Jesus in the Roman Empire? Okay? Thanks, guys. God bless you. And I'll see you soon.